Take a breath. Our theme this month is steadfastness. My topic today is true resilience. True resilience. As I've been thinking about this topic, steadfastness, I realize that for most of my life, I confuse steadfastness with stubbornness. Yeah, steadfastness to me meant not changing. Digging your heels in, I will not be moved. Now, I know it's really, really challenging to imagine me as a stubborn little kid. I can hear my father now. She's just downright ornery. And then I can remember, well, she gets it from you. I think I shared here a couple of months ago this epiphany moment when I was having a conversation with my father, maybe around their 55-year anniversary. They were married 65 years when my father passed away. And he was complaining about something. And around about 35 or 40 years old of my own self, I'd gotten to the point, just let them be. You know, it's their marriage. I lived with them 18 years. They've been married 65. You know what I mean? They've been doing this a long time without me. They don't need my advice. But for whatever reason, I just kind of snapped during this conversation. And I was like, Dad, let it go. Let it go. She's not going to change. You're not going to change her. And he just looked at me and he says, I'm not trying to change your mother. And he just said, well, okay, then what are we doing? And why do we keep doing it? And I will never forget what he said. He said, I'm not trying to change her. He says, I'm just showing I can't be changed. And I realized my whole life I missed it. That I thought they were trying to change each other. Neither one of them was trying to change the other. Each was trying to prove to the other they couldn't be changed. And I looked at it and I thought, wow. And then I had to think about how much of that somewhere did that get in me. I've grown to learn in my spiritual maturation that steadfastness is just the opposite. Steadfastness is not stubbornness at all. Steadfastness is not doing the same thing over and over again or even expecting the same thing to be done. That steadfastness is in the resilience. Steadfastness is in the capacity to keep on keeping on and rolling with the punches and rolling with the changes. Listen to the difference to that. That steadfastness is no change. Steadfastness is the resilience of change. It's that ability to bounce back. It's that ability to keep coming back. When you look at nature, there is nothing in nature that stays the same. There is nothing in nature that just holds on. There is nothing in nature that tries to duplicate what it's already done. Listen to that. It's contrary to nature. The sunset doesn't try to repeat itself. A wave doesn't try to repeat itself. A tree doesn't try to produce the same leaf again. It's always the new one. It's always the next one. The steadfastness of the tree is not that year after year after year, the tree just keeps doing the same thing over and over again. The steadfastness of the tree is that no matter what the seasons are, no matter what it is that happens, the tree keeps showing up. And the tree keeps saying yes to the next iteration. Listen to that. The steadfastness is the next iteration. Now, through stubbornness, you can just stick through anything. Okay? So I'm not necessarily saying that a long marriage is necessarily a good marriage, or that a long relationship is necessarily a good one. But what I do know is that if you are in a long committed anything, any kind of long relationship, there is a steadfastness that is there that is in this kind of resilience. Your steadfastness has not come from decade after decade after decade, nobody changing. The steadfastness has come in that you show up for the change. Okay? There's a certain amount of transparency that you bring to the table. Growing together does not mean growing exactly the same. It means you share your growth with the other in real time. In real time as it's happening, so the two of you can make your adjustments as it's going along. I didn't get this. Okay? And I've blown up some relationships in the past over that. I remember when I was first starting Interlight, there was a book that I started reading called Conscious Loving by the Hendricks, Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. And they had this concept of the microscopic truth. And the microscopic truth meant telling the truth while you're in it. Okay. That wasn't my style back then at all. See, I would work on it inside, kind of figure it all out. But by the time you got the news, it was too late. I kind of already made up my mind what I was going to do, or I'd already shifted or recalibrated away or whatever, and nobody had a chance at that particular point in time to get in there with me to make that shift or that change with me. Are you with me? Okay. That's not, if you want to do steadfastness and you want to keep something going, there's a way that you keep showing up and you're sharing the growth with each other as you're going. That's a steadfastness. I want to give a shout out to Foster Anderson and the Shared Adventures group for putting on yet one more extraordinary day at the beach yesterday. And a number of Interlighters, some of you in the room, were there. So there's this event that happens right there where the boardwalk is at Kyle Beach, where the beach is transformed into this playground area for people with disabilities. The most extraordinary thing you ever wanted to see in your life. The unions come out and they put all the planks of this plywood and these huge wheelchairs that can roll around, and all kinds of water sports where people can actually get in the water in a wheelchair or get in the water, whatever. So I chose to be on this team that for hours on end, we were pulling in and pushing out kayaks into the ocean. And this incredible apparatus structure, I don't even know what you call this thing because I've never seen it for anything else, where it can lift people out of a wheelchair and set them down into a kayak if their bodies are able to bend enough to get in there, and the way they're braced in and all the rest of it. And then there's a paddle, these two-seated kayaks. So at the afternoon, they were running a little short in terms of people. I hadn't planned on being there that long. But as I'm watching all of these people who were waiting with this anticipation, some of them probably had never been in the ocean in their lives. And I remember looking at them and thinking, now that's resilience. Whatever has these people here with the hunger and the drive and the audacity to say, why not me? Why can't I get into the ocean? Why can't I play? To watch the caregivers, because for every one person that was there as a participant, there had to be at least one other person who was a caretaker or a family member, and quite often there was like a multitude of people, and the resilience of the families of what that was like for them, regardless of whether somebody was injured along the way and their life suddenly changed, as Foster's did, who started the program, or whether they were born with some kind of condition and all the adjustments or whatnot that the families had to make. But when I looked in their eyes, and I really thought about, okay, well, what else are you going to do this afternoon, Deborah? You know, what else are you going to do? You just going to go to another beach and chill? You're going to go to another beach and chill, and they're going to be sitting here on this plank trying to get into the beach. And I thought about all the classes that I've been teaching on social justice and about privilege. And I knew that my physical capability and even my strength, because not everybody could do that, hauling out and back and forth into the ocean with that was a gift. Are you with me? That was a gift. That was a privilege. That I had a kind of resilience. They had a kind of resilience. And if we put the thing together, everybody can be happy. If I stayed true in my steadfastness in what I could give and what I could offer and what I had to bring. No, it wasn't exactly how I thought I was going to spend my whole day, but wasn't it wonderful? And I learned so much, and I was so deeply, deeply touched. This resilience is the capacity to keep coming back. You hear me say over and over again that we were not promised a rose garden, that life never promised us that we would not suffer stuff, that we would not go through some stuff. What it has promised us is that if we do our spiritual work, if we keep up our practice, if we keep our sense of connectedness with the divine, we will restore, we will regenerate, we will rejuvenate. This steadfastness is not the same thing over and over and over again, but the capacity in the resilience to rejuvenate, to revitalize, to restore, to bounce back and get back in the game, get back into it or into whatever's next that is evolving along the way, but not to be just down and out. You hear me use sometimes the parable of the two foundations that you find at the end of the Sermon on the Mount in the last part of the book of Matthew, the 7th chapter, where Jesus talks about these two foundations. And at the end of all of these things that he's saying, he says, he who hears these words and does something with them is likened to the wise man that builds his house upon the rock. And when the winds and the rain comes, the house still stands. He who hears the things that I'm saying and doesn't do anything with it is likened to the foolish man who builds his house upon the sand, and when the winds and the rains come, great is the fall of the house. Jesus isn't being negative, okay? Just really simple. You build on solid stuff, when rain comes, your house stands. You don't build on solid stuff, when rains come, your house falls. It's just the way that it is. The temporal, the stuff that's shifting and changing, the outer world of people, places, and things. When we build our house, and I'm not just talking about your residence, you, where you live, you take you with you wherever you go. If you build you on the temporal, guess what? When the winds and rains come, that shifts your foundation, you fall with it. Right? Then you got to do whatever you got to do to rebuild yourself back up. Some of us keep building on that same sand. over and over and over again, asking questions about why did this happen? I remember the Spirit letter saying, exactly what is it that you need to understand, Reverend Daughter, about sand to understand that it shifts? Why do you keep asking me these questions about why this or why that? What do you need to know about sand to figure this out? When I was a child, going to Sunday school, there was a particular Bible passage that we were taught by memory, and we had to quote it all the time. It's from the book of John, chapter 3, verse 16. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Anybody heard of that one? Okay, so those of you who were raised in Christian environments have heard this one, I'm sure. I'd like to give you a little different interpretation than what you probably got in Sunday school. And I'm looking at this now from a strictly linguistic context. I'm not here to debate different people's theology, but I'm just going straight into the language. The language of the New Testament we first got in Greek. This idea of God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That word loved, this is the agapeo love. This is the oneness love. This is the volition. This is the direction of the will. This is not a feeling, emotional love. This is the love of social justice work. This is the soul force that Gandhi talks about. This is the love of the beloved community that Martin Luther King Jr. speaks of. This is that love where you choose to stay connected regardless of what you think about the people. God so loved the world. It's so connected to it, so much a part of it. And this world means all of it. Linguistically speaking, this world means all of it. All the people, the planet, everything on it. It's the whole thing. It's not cutting up some people or putting some people out, all of it. That God felt so one with everybody and everything. It says he gave his only begotten Son. So let's just deal with this for a second. Breathe. Okay? Just breathe. First off, this Son is huios. And it doesn't mean just an offspring. This is a likeness in character. It can be singular, it can be plural. It is not gender specific. Sometimes it's used in the plural. For example, in the Beatitudes, at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, in the 5th chapter of Matthew, where it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." These peacemakers aren't mediators. This word only shows up once in the Bible. It's a contrived word. Jesus was famous for that, taking concepts and putting them together. This peacemaker is the one who expresses the peace of God as their nature. The ones who have found it so deep within them that their presence brings peace. Not they're negotiating between warring parties, but they emanate something that's so profound in its presence, falsehood has to melt. Blessed are these peacemakers, for they shall be called huios. They shall be called the children of God. This is the same word that's used for the Son of God. Sometimes Jesus is referred to as the Son of Man. In those instances, when it's talking about his likeness and character of what it means to be a human being, sometimes it's the Son of God that wields the likeness and the character of what it means to understand our relationship with the divine. It's like different aspects of the self. It gave itself, gave the world its likeness and character as its only begotten. To beget means to come forth out of it. And I remember how blown away I was, and I highly, 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 highly recommend that in my book, The Sacred Yes, which are these revelations of these downloads, these spirit letters in them. In the first volume, The Sacred Yes, of the Letters from the Infinite series, there's a letter in there called The Only Begotten. And it was just like, duh. The spirit voice says, this idea of the only begotten is the wheels. It's the likeness and character. It's not about a person. I can never do anything that small and narrow. It is my only begotten because it is the only thing I can beget. It's not my only begotten because there's something that I did only once. Myself is all I can beget. Myself is all I can give to the world because that's all that I am. I give me. God so loved the world, gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in this, not a person, but to believe, to have your faith in, building your house upon that rock, that sense of oneness. Whosoever believes in that, believes in your likeness and character as part of the divine, shall not perish, but have everlasting life. This perish is to decay, to wither, to lesser in quality. It would be the same as if you go to the grocery store, they tell you sometimes, like, refrigerate this thing or that because it's perishable. Okay? It's not saying it's going to die, but it's saying that after a certain amount of time, it's going to change form. So you forget about it, you leave it in the refrigerator, you open it up a couple of weeks later, it's not dead. There's a whole lot of life in that jar. Now, it may not be anything you want to eat, but it didn't die. It perished according to the way that you would want it to be. But the perish is in this existence. See, it isn't like die and then go away. You shall not perish in this life. You won't decay. You won't deteriorate. You won't become so jaded or abused or misused or whatever that is, that in your mind you lessen who you are. No, that won't happen to you. You will have everlasting life. Now, we have taken this to mean in the by and by. Like you're going to die, and then you're going to go to some place called heaven as this everlasting life. That's not what it is. I don't have time to break down every word, but let me just at least share that one word, Zoe, to you, which means the life. That life that's being spoken, this everlasting life. It's life, referring to the principle of life in the spirit and soul. Zoe is the principle of life in the spirit and the soul. It's distinguished from bios. It's not bios. It's distinguished from bios, physical life, or livelihood, of which Zoe is the nobler. This life is not the biological life. It's not the quantitative life. It's the qualitative life, which is nobler. Referring to the principle of life in the spirit and the soul, distinguished from bios, physical life or livelihood, in which Zoe is the nobler word, expressing the highest and the best. It's the highest blessedness of the creature. Blessed are the blah, blah, blah. It's speaking of the everlasting life that's Zoe of it. This is resilience. This is resilience. That we have been given something. And if we understand who we are, if we understand our relationship to the only thing that is. Jesus was trying to tell people this all the time. It's not me. It's something within me. And this that's within me is within you. Because we've all come out of it. I'm nothing special. I'm not doing anything that anybody couldn't do if you knew who you were. Do you know who you are? This is the same promise that's in any path that leads to truth. Any path that leads to truth promises you resilience. They promise you the capacity to come back. They promise you the capacity to forgive, to let go, to renew, to restore, to regenerate, give you back the years even the locusts have eaten. No matter how it is that you look at it, the last word has never been spoken. The last deed has never been done. It doesn't care how many bombs have fallen. It doesn't care what all we have done. It just doesn't care. Life keeps being itself. If you were to just look at the world right now, think about the United States. Think about Japan. It's unconscionable to think now that the U.S. dropped not one, but 2 atomic bombs on the country of Japan. Unprecedented in human history to use such a weapon of mass destruction. Boom! I mean, dog, pony, woman, child, plant, boom! Not once, but we did it again. 2 days later, after we had a chance to think about it, wanting an unconditional surrender. Boom! It's like, well, shoot, I'd surrender too. These people are crazy. And it's no wonder we're afraid of weapons of mass destruction, because we have seen what can happen. Yes? And we look at this now. You look at the relationship now. It'll be a cold day in hell before the U.S. drops another atomic bomb on Japan. A cold day in hell. Because we're living more in the oneness. We see how our fates are interdependent and intertwined. We know we can't drop a bomb on them without hurting us, because there's no them over there. Our economy, our lives, they're intertwined, yes? Even something as devastating as that, life keeps on going. life keeps being resilient. Now, I'm not saying there's no animosity anywhere, but somehow these two countries have managed to pass on. When you look at your own life and you look at your families, this was in the 40s. How many places are we still stuck and have not moved on? I'm just saying, if two countries can do it after atomic bombs, certainly we can do it in our homes. Certainly we can do it in our families. Are there still amends to be made? Yes. But I am saying that within life itself is an innate resilience. Within life itself is the ability to keep coming back and doing it differently the next time, and growing and learning and healing. Does it take away what's happened before? No, but we don't have to get stuck in it. We don't have to keep repeating it. We don't have to keep making the same mistakes. We can make new choices. And that's where the steadfastness comes in, is you keep your eye on the prize. You keep your eye on the goal. You keep your eye on where it is that you want to go. Then no matter how much wind or rain that there is, your eye is on the prize. So it may not happen this way. It's got to happen that way. So it may not be through this relationship, it's through another relationship. So it may not be through this job, so it's through another job. So I may not have the usage of my limbs the way that I used to have it, but there'll be some other kind of way that the creativity or whatnot will come through me. The steadfastness is not the stubborn, I can't let it go and I got to get the same thing over and over and over again and not change. It's just the opposite. It's the resilience of allowing life to happen and knowing I am more than this, because I am one with the only thing that is. Isn't that extraordinary? We're not stuck. Nothing's stuck. Your body temple is constantly rejuvenating itself. Life is constantly reproducing itself over and over and over again. And in any moment in time, we can make that correction, like that little trim tab on the ship. Just a little trajectory sends you off in a whole nother direction. Sometimes steadfastness means we have to shift direction. Listen to that. Sometimes steadfastness, in order to really be true to the principles and the goals, means we actually have to shift direction and do something else that's more in alignment with what it is that's trying to be birthed. Isn't this good news? Isn't it great news? We're free. We're free. There's a book I'm reading right now. I highly recommend. We use this guy's material in our classes, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dispenza. I'm reading his book now, How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself. It's really good stuff. It's really, really good stuff. And steadfastness, resilience requires that. Us breaking the habit of being ourselves. Because the way that we've been, building on whatever that sand is or whatever it is that we've been doing, the newness, the refreshing requires you show up a little differently. How many of you raised children? Did you not have to change along the way? Steadfastness in being a parent doesn't mean you keep showing up parenting the exact same way every year. No. That's not what it is. The steadfastness is in your commitment to be available. Your steadfastness is your commitment to do whatever it takes. And that includes changing, if that's what's for the highest good. And the anticipation of it. Somehow we think we can stay with somebody in a relationship for 30 years and not change. Doesn't work that way. Everything's always changing. Be current and available for your rejuvenation, and have the courage to share your growth in real time. Take a breath. Let us pray.